Backstage with Bad Brad, episode 47. And I'm very thankful to have you here tonight. And I wanna address a hot topic right now because I did a video at the beginning of the year on Keith Urban, right? And I talked about my experience seeing Keith around Nashville and how I was playing at Third and Lindsley one time, and Keith was there, and his longtime bass player Jerry Flowers was playing with the band that I was in that night. And so I known Jerry Flowers, his bass player of 25 years. I knew him for a long time, right? But only did maybe 2 or 3 gigs with him in that time period. Knew him when I first got started in Nashville. And I did that long video about, feeling bad for Jerry Flowers and explaining how these things kind of happen in the music business and people lose their gigs and all that. Well, that video, because of the recent Keith Urban controversy, that video has been at the top of my charts here on this channel now for the last couple days. People are curious about it, so they must be revisiting that old video. And I'm gonna add an addendum to that, and I'm gonna tell you that I had, and I don't think I've ever really told this on the channel, but I had reached out. Jerry Flowers had actually reached out to me on Instagram and said, "Hey man, thanks for making that video. It was a tough thing and yada, yada, yada." And I said, "Hey man, I totally get it. I understand how it is." And I said, "Hey, would you want to come on the channel and do an interview?" And he said, "You know what? Yeah, I would like to do that. Paul, thank you so much. Thank you, brother." And so I had set up and had Jerry Flowers booked to come on the channel and talk about, getting off the Keith Urban gig and what was going on and all that. But here's the thing. I wasn't going to pry into what was going on. I wasn't expecting a tell-all. I mean, people in the business, they'll give you some information, but you're not going to get all the information, right? But then all of a sudden, man, about 2 days before the interview, he reaches out and says, "Hey man, I'm not going to be able to do the interview," and that was it. That was it. Thank you, Leanne. So I even waited a couple months, and I said, "Hey Jerry, man, I understand how it is. I've been on gigs and lost the gig, and when it's tough at first, but look, I understand how it is, and we don't even have to talk about that." No response. Maybe one other time I reached out and said, "Hey man, would you? I'd still like to have you on the channel. I'd just like to have him on the channel to, talk about doing that gig and not anything negative or even hashing why he was let go or the band was let go or anything like that." No reply at all. Mike H., our moderator there, which, by the way, shout out to Dave and Paul, who are our moderators tonight, and we want to keep everything respectful in the comments. Of course, this is an Ask Me Anything episode, and I'm all for it. If we happen to get some Keith Urban, fans into this chat, then they're more than likely female, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. But here's the deal, man. I said to my wife just now, I said, maybe after that video came out, maybe Keith Urban said, "Hey, we're going to give you some severance pay, but we're going to ask you to sign this NDA." So they maybe cut decent sized checks. I mean, who knows? This is all speculation. I don't know for sure. But the reason why I'm telling you all this stuff, the reason why I'm telling you is, and me and my wife both came to the realization, we're not going to hear anything from the official Keith or Nicole. We're not going to hear anything from them on this specifically. Yes, Freddie B. We are talking about that because one of my old videos talking about Keith Urban letting his band go has ridden up the charts on my channel. And so, yeah, I'm gonna, it's a hot topic right now. And, but we're not going to hear from Keith. Keith, here's the other deal. The girl that he supposedly flirted with on stage, Maggie Baugh or whatever, she supposedly wasn't at the next show. They say it's not a big deal. You know, who knows, dude? But we're not going to get until Keith's ready to come out. And look, they're not going to let Keith Urban come out in the public with just some can girl. No pun, you know, joking aside. If they want to improve, you know, PR teams may be hired to get him some, you know, story. And here's this lovely girl who he's now devoting himself to and all that. This stuff is all big business. Maybe what you were seeing with, you know, what they were before in his marriage, maybe that was Hollywood business, right? We'll never know what goes on behind the curtain. But then there were the tabloid stories, and I remember them from being in Nashville. There were the tabloid stories before he got married that there were other girls that were coming forward. Now, who knows if those stories are true? We don't know. But it's documented that Keith has had his struggles. You know, who hasn't, right? Some might be having struggles tonight. But that's really about all I can comment on this, except just saying that I don't think there's going to be any more official story. The next report you're going to see on this is either Nicole Kidman out in public on a date or Keith Urban out in public on a date. So Mullet, I'm going to get to the questions now because this is Ask Me Anything. Mullet the Guitar Guru. You like playing your SG or Les Paul better? I think these days, because I never really messed with an SG much in the past, these days I go for an SG first, but it's depending on what I need to do. If I got to do power chords and I want a Les Paul tone, I got to go for the Les Paul. But I kind of like the SG just because it feels different. It's just got a different feel to it. Chris Richardson asks, Brad, have you played any of the Wild audio stuff? I have not. I would be more than happy to try the Wild audio stuff out. So, Zach, if you're listening, which, by the way, this brings up another. Thank you for asking me about the Wild audio, reminding me. So today, I did an interview with Chris Samardich. He is the head guy with the Brotherhood of Light. The Brotherhood of Light is the company that provided those psychedelic light shows for the Fillmore and Winterland, and on tour with the Allman Brothers, and out now with the Betts Allman Revival, Allman Betts Revival. And he was there the night that Zach Wilde played with the Allman Brothers. If you can imagine, Dickie Betts quits in the beginning of a tour, and they're up somewhere and they're like, hey, Zach Wilde's in town. Why don't we he loves the Allman Brothers. Why don't we get him up to play with you guys? So that interview is coming up soon for Rockstar members of the channel. I just got to edit it and put it up on the channel. It's an amazing interview. Allman Brothers, the Doors, I mean, this guy's done it all, man. And we had a great conversation, and He's been a fan of the channel, and I'm a fan of his channel, and that's coming up for Rockstar members of the channel. Now, I just had a comment. Who inspired you to pick up the guitar? That's a great question, and I was a very little kid, and I guess it was hearing Scotty Moore on those early Elvis records, Hound Dog. Now, I'm going to show you something. I have a theory. I have a theory that in the 50s, when early Elvis records like Jailhouse Rock and Hound Dog, that's proto metal. That's the early days of hard rock, right? And I'll do a case in point. You know, before there was drop tunings and all that, if you look at what Scotty Moore plays on Hound Dog, dude, he's hitting those. Okay, he's hitting those lower strings, right? And it's like metal, dude. Yeah, I got to be careful because I just found out that Mia is sleeping in the other room, so this may be the whisper version of that. But yeah, putting a fifth on the bottom of that chord, that C chord. The song is in C. Gives it that fat sound, man, which, you know, we all know metal is all about that these days. So with all that, right, with all that stuff, we'll see what questions we have in, but I'm gonna go ahead and pop this, dude. Oh, we have a few. Yeah, are the Aussies in the house tonight? Do we have some Aussies out there? P-Funk? Yes. Dude, think about it. It was what? 1950? Oh, Blue Pill, glad to have you here. It was 1956, and he's adding that low fifth on there, dude. Dude, that's the heaviest guitar, hardest rocking guitar on the planet at that point in time. And you can say whatever you want, but dude, that Hound Dog is a slamming track, dude. Brad, what do you think of Billy Gibbons super light strings? Have you ever tried them 7? No, I have not tried super light strings, but I will say this, and there's the Rick Beato video about using different string gauges, and he proves that the thicker strings don't sound thicker. I noticed on the road towards the end, when I switched to 9s from 10s, it sounded like my guitar was sitting better in my in-ear mix with 9s on. All of a sudden, I could hear everything. It was clearer, all of that. So, you know what? If 7s work for him, great. If 7s work for him, great. Brad picked up Ovation Legend, man. Poppy sound and great action. Smoked 3K guitars I played. Very cool, Steve. Now I'm trying to keep up with the questions, but here's the deal. I can only keep, once I'm start answering a question, I can't always catch up. What did your practice routine look like growing up? Great question, Chris Richardson. I think before I went to Berkeley, my practicing regime was just playing along the records. And when I went to Berkeley and I started hearing guys practicing repetitive phrases, that's when I realized, like, oh, there's a thing called chops. There's chops, right? And these guys have really worked on their chops. So from that point on, I started focusing more on being able to play, fast lines and stuff. Yeah, petting the repeat, exactly, Mike H. Playing those Demiola style. At the time, you figured it was, a lot of the guys up there were playing the Demiola style, speed picking. Not everybody had Van Halen figured out at that point in time in 1982. A lot of guys on the East Coast still weren't quite sure what he was doing. So practicing repetitive phrases, building up the strength. That's yeah, sure, Steve. It needs to be clean. Yeah, but I think it's more like lifting some weights, and until you've lifted, like if you can sort of lift 35 pounds, then 20 pounds is easy. So it gives you something to work on speed wise. Did you practice to slow down records? Canine Grammar? I really didn't. I really didn't. And back in those days, dude, you tried to learn stuff by moving the needle on the record and dropping it in the same spot. Or the easier way would be to put it on cassette and then stop the cassette and then go and rewind. It was really hard to get stuff off of records. That's why I'm really better at playing my own stuff. So, as far as copying people, man, I was probably the worst at it, you know. This is what we're drinking tonight. It's good. Red says, I used to wait for songs to come on the radio and recorded them on cassette. Yes, I used to do the same thing, Red. WFM Studios, did you read Guitar Player or any other guitar rags? Absolutely. WFM, I read everything I could get my hands on. Do you think tone comes from the hands or the type of pedal one uses? I think it's absolutely from the hands, Joey. Blue Pill, he was a radio recorder and TV. Very cool. Pentatonics are overrated. Put some triads in them. Absolutely. Hot zone. Hoyt zone. Yeah, I'm drinking sparkling water here. It's very refreshing. And I'm chasing it with Red Bull. Yeah, there's the... So Bo is making a point there. He says Wolf Marshall taught him how to play songs incorrectly. There was all kinds of, look, man, the electric guitar is still a new instrument. Yeah, the guitar's been around for a few centuries, but the electric guitar, it really started to get into popular culture and become a huge thing in the 50s, right? Yeah, there were some jazz guys, Charlie Christian and stuff, doing stuff before that. But, here's the deal, man. We've literally seen the guitar evolve through the course of our life. We've really seen it. And there was so much wrong information. You didn't, not everybody could teach you how to do stuff. I had a couple teachers at one point that just basically said, I can't teach you anything else. Or I can only teach you more if I teach you how to play over chord changes. Steve is asking, Brad, what's your Mount Rushmore of guitarists? Steve, I think that's a question that I've answered before, and that would really depend on what type of guitar player are we looking at. I mean, I like a lot more different stuff. Yeah, guitar player. John Pitch is saying guitar player used to have tabs for about 5 songs every month. Yeah, and look, I would mess with those tabs a little bit, and some of them were right, and some of them weren't. You grab bits and pieces here and there, and be able to hear things and pick things off the radio, and then learn some scales, learn some triads, learn your arpeggios. Be able to play chromatically up and down the neck, and have good pocket when you play rhythm guitar, and you know, and so Tone Dog is saying the guy with Bill Haley was shredding. Yes, that was. I actually did some gigs with the crew. It was the Buddy. It was Bill Haley. Comets. I actually some of the gigs we did with Gary Lewis. The Comets were on the gig, and it was three guys still that were alive at that time from Bill Haley's band. And yes, that guitar solo in Rock Around the Clock is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And yes, Paul, thank you. Let's get those likes up. We've got 89 people in here. And we've talked about the Keith Urban thing. If you missed that segment, you might want to watch the beginning of this and then watch the whole thing. Yeah, guitarist Cliff Gallup, right, with Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps. Yeah, he was a big influence on Jeff Beck. And you know, man, I really like Brian Setzer. I really like Scotty Moore. I like all that 50s style guitar playing. I'm not that great at playing that style, but I really like listening to it. There's some really interesting Scotty Moore solos on. Listen to the Elvis song "Too Much." Crazy guitar solo, dude. It's weird, man. It's weird. And Jeff Beck, look, man. So as far as the Mount Rushmore of guitarists, I mean, dude, how could I pick 4 or 5 guys? How could I pick 4 or 5 guys in the grand scheme of all those guitar players? I can't pick that. You could say, who's the 50s Mount Rushmore of rock and popular guitar players? Chuck Berry, number 1. Scotty Moore, number 2. James Burton, number 3. Bo Diddley, number 4. And number 5 would be a tie between Buddy Holly and the Cliff Gallup guy from Gene Vincent. You know, that, or maybe the Bill Haley guy. And that would be narrowing it down to guys that are kind of on the same charts and doing the same thing at the same time. That would be my 50s stuff, right? As far as 60s, okay, 60s rock guitar players, you got to go Hendrix, number 1. You got to go Clapton, number 2, or Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck, number 2. Jimmy Page, number 3, because he was in the Yardbirds. Eric Clapton, so that's Hendrix, Beck, Page, Clapton, and wild card, I'd say Mick Taylor. Maybe not Mick Taylor, because his better stuff in the Stones was in the 70s. But yeah. So that's a list of guys that are all in the same thing. But who's not to say that Wes Montgomery and Les Paul and Barney Kessel and Joe Pass and any of those guys would be on the jazz Mount Rushmore, right? In the 60s. So I mean, you can't pick. Now I would throw Roy Clark maybe as 70s TV guitar player. Jim Hall, that's another guy. 70s rock guitar players. You got to go Trower, right? You got to go Beck again. You got to go Edward Van Halen again, or for the first time. You got to go Terry Kath. It's like I can't pick five guys from um, from one, uh, for the whole eternity of the world. To me, it just doesn't. That doesn't work. Ah, Peter Frampton was great. Now, here's a funny story. You guys have probably never heard. So, George Benson, you guys all know, did the scatting thing on guitar, right? Where he'd play a line, right? He'd play a line on the guitar, and he'd sing along, right? Right? He would do that, right? Well, George is doing his thing, right? And he's riding up the charts, right? And all of a sudden he hears Peter Frampton with the wow, 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 right? And he's going, who is this guy? And he started to get angry because he thought, well, I'm the guy that sings when he plays. But then he said, you know what? I went and listened to that young man, and I said, you know what he's doing? He's entertaining the people. And I thought that was a really cool revelation. On the one hand, he thought, man, this guy's doing my shtick, right? But then he realized, man, it's different, and he's doing something that is people are digging, and that's all it's really about, man. It's all it's really about. What about Al Di Meola? Al Di Meola is great, but for me, I don't. The tonality of it. Look, Di Meola is almost like has his own flavor of playing, like Yngwie has his own flavor of playing. It sounds Di Meola sounds more Spanish, and Yngwie sounds more European. Then you got Stanley Jordan. I mean, look, if you put the guys with the most ridiculous technique ever, I mean, you'd almost have to say Stanley Jordan was one of the most ridiculous. And here's the thing, man. You don't hardly hear anything about Stanley Jordan. Now, he's quietly out there playing gigs and doing his thing, right? He's still out there playing and still two-handed, playing chords in one hand and melody in the other. But you don't ever hear people talking about Stanley Jordan. So, I mean, even I can remember somebody, and this, you guys will like this. I was in a guitar seminar, and I believe it was Howard Roberts, right? And somebody asked him, what do you think of Stanley Jordan? Because Howard Roberts is a well-known jazz guitar player, and from the old school. And he said something to the effect of, it's incredible, but I keep waiting for it's like the two trains to collide, which I guess is the trick of that whole thing. Is you've got two trains moving, this one playing bass line and chords, which a lot of times he'd play bass line and chords in this hand, and the melody and chords with this hand. And to his ears, it sounded like a train that was going to collide. Now, that may be his way of kind of going, that's not really my bag, or whatever. And you got to expect that from the old school cats. They're generally everybody's trying to protect their niche, Oh, and by the way, we're glad to have FMP here joining us again, brother. We've missed you. Chris Richardson says, I always like George Lynch's phrasing. I love George Lynch's phrasing. One of my all-time favorite rock players. Brad Hardesty is saying Hank Garland played the guitar hook on Little Sister. Yes, he did. And check out Hank Garland on the Elvis track "A Fool Such as I." Killer, killer guitar solo, killer guitar hook at the top of the song. Twang. I think it's better than Little Sister. Little Sister is a cool tune, and that's a cool guitar part as well. But dude, the twang on "A Fool Such as I," Hank Garland on that, and on the thing about early Elvis records, you can hear Elvis clapping and moving around in the room while he's tracking, or sometimes he's tapping out the snare drum hit on the back of his guitar. And at one point, it's "I Need Your Love Tonight." That's the one. That's another Hank Garland one. Hank Garland, "I Need Your Love Tonight." Hank Garland goes into the solo, and immediately you hear Elvis go, "Yeah!" Like it literally creating this in the studio, and boom, he hears the dude break into the solo, and Elvis just like erupts, like, "Yeah, like do that," and that's, dude, that stuff was cut all live off the floor, the way it was done back in the day. And that, my friends, is the way they used to make records. So, again, man, the interview I did today with the Brotherhood of Light, psychedelic light show, San Francisco, Fillmore, Winterland, the Allman Brothers, all of that, dude. Man, we got into all that music stuff on that, and it's super cool, dude. That's going to be up on the channel for Rockstar members. And I have not seen the video of Jose Feliciano covering Purple Haze. I might have to check that out. Yeah, Rhonda. I mean, and here's the thing, man. Dave says, Brad, Joseph asked if you crossed paths with Brett Mason. I have not. I've never actually met him. I have gone and seen him play it at 3rd and Lindsley. And I used to occasionally play this bar near Opryland, Music City Bar and Grill. And I remember playing there a couple times, and Brett Mason's brother was like a regular there. And he'd go, "Oh man, yeah, you play really good." And he'd be, typical barroom stuff. I don't even know if it was really Brett Mason's brother or not, but a couple times I played in there, he would always go out of his way to introduce himself. And I play a completely different style of guitar than Brett Mason. But I can't say that I actually hung out with him. Did you know Steve Wariner played pedal steel in a Megadeth track? I don't know that, but now I do. It must have been something that Dan Huff produced. I'm guessing. I'm just guessing because I know Dan Huff produced a Megadeth album. Bo is asking if I'm a Trent Reznor fan. I like his stuff. In the 90s, it was seemingly like dancers really liked Nine Inch Nails, so I would go along with it, right? If the Nine Inch Nail song came on and they got really fired up about it, I can salute that. So that's I've worked I worked one Nine Inch Nails show as a security guard, and got this. Here's the deal: you see the show for free, right? And you do nothing but stand there basically and see the show for free, and you make a couple bucks. And so I saw a lot of bands in that era. I saw by doing that. Otherwise, I would have never gone to those shows. Wouldn't have had the money to go to those shows. But yeah, thank you. So, Brad Hardesty, this is really fun tonight. You guys are helping keep some brain recall. Awesome. Everybody is helping here. Yeah, and P Funk is saying I dig some of that surf music guitar, despite what Hendrix said. Yeah, look, in my old age, I'm starting to like the Beach Boys. I don't know what's going on. Uh, what's his name? Bart is asking, what years did you play in LA? Approximately 89 to 94. 89 to 94. Yeah, the Beach Boys have great harmonies. And there's a few songs that literally, it just sounds to me like Surfer Girl. There's something about that song, dude. I can literally see that girl in my head and imagine I'm lonely dude on the beach and watching the surfer girl. It just something. It's there's something that Brian Wilson put in those melodies that really it's like from another world, man. And the same with what's God only knows, and wouldn't it be nice? Yeah, that's another one. P Funk and what's some of the other ones? My daughter likes Surfing USA. She hears that all the time. And Good Vibrations is trippy. Um, so there's a lot of cool stuff in their catalog. Melancholy. The Beach Boys stuff is very melancholy. It's something. The way Brian Wilson writes melodies reminds me of the guy I wrote all the Suitcase Pimp stuff with. He would write these real eerie, ethereal, long, held out notes, sorrowful kind of like stuff. It reminds me of stuff he would kind of write, and it's a whole different mindset than maybe the way I think when I write. California Girls is an ingenious song. All right, what else we got? We're having a good man. This is an awesome night. California Girls still rocks, and I used to think the David Lee Roth version was the ultimate. And now I'm gonna throw it back to the Beach Boys. There's just something about the sound that they created. I don't know. Is it the everything dripping in spring reverb, the tic tac bass parts? Yeah, there's something special about that, and the Wrecking Crew, Tommy Tedesco, and what's the drummer's name? I can't think of his. Hal Blaine, all of those guys. Carol Kay. It's just, yeah, it's from another world, man. It's from another place. Now imagine if they'd have had more tracks back then, and we could have gotten the isolated tracks of everything, so that we could remix it and remaster it, make it clearer sounding. But here's a question for you guys out there: Would it would it ruin the Beach Boys if they did have all the original tracks, but they gave it a modern mix? Would it ruin it? Is it better the way it is, mixed with everything bounced down and lo-fi? Is that part of the appeal of those records? If you're watching this after it airs, let me know in the comments, because I'm actually really curious. If you'd ruin it, Mike H says leave it alone. Absolutely not, Christopher Maxwell. So I assume everyone's saying no, don't remix it. It's like this. Anybody notice a handful of the ZZ Top records they remixed in the 80s or early 90s and put all this reverb on the snare drum and tried to hype everything up more? To me, I don't. And here's the deal. Now those are the only mixes I hear like on the radio, and I'd rather hear those songs without and I like the sound of a big reverberated drum, like 80s rock, the drum wash, yeah. But on this ZZ Top stuff, I prefer that old, dry, like Austin, Texas studio with no reverb and sounding like a dry as a cactus. I like that better than those remixes that sound like trying to fit into 80s classic rock. It's production just for the sake of production. And yeah, I think they're usually worse. Occasionally things are improved, right? I mean, they're not always worse, right? Things are improved. They've got the new Elvis movie, which who knows now? Now they're saying like it's going to come out next year or whatever, even though they debuted it up in France. But they went and it took the original guitar, drums, bass, and then they added the recut, the symphony and the orchestra and all that, because they just didn't have good miking techniques. You know, they didn't have enough channels back then to capture a full orchestra and make it sound like this big thing. I mean, think about that, dude. Think about how many pieces were in Elvis Presley's 70s band. A lot of times they'd have an orchestra back there. He'd have, 6 or 7 background singers, keyboard player, 2 guitar players, a bass player, and nowadays, I mean, dude, you're lucky if you get 4 people on stage and a shit ton of backing tracks. You're never going to see a musical performance, purely musical, like that again. Going to see Elvis and hearing the orchestra warming up before he comes out and does, That's All Right Mama or CC Rider, whatever one he decides to belt out at the beginning of the show. And he had the guy, the director, Joe, I can't think of his last, Garagiola. I did get to meet him in Nashville. He came to a Trick Pony rehearsal and he came up to the band. The Trick Pony had 3 people up front. And he comes up to the bandstand. He'd watched us rehearse. And he walked right past the 3 up front and he goes up to us and goes, you guys are the guys that are keeping this train rolling. And I said, man, that was like the highest honor that Elvis's conductor, orchestra conductor, was like, you guys are the ones that are driving this train. So those are moments like that. Like if you're a rock star member of the channel, there's a jam posted with me and Steve Cropper and Charlie Daniels jamming the blues for like 8 minutes. And I played a one time around solo because everybody in the band he gave a little solo to. And after I played my solo, and I didn't even think he listened to my solo, but he comes up to me while Cropper's playing his solo, and he gives me a hug, pats me on the back, and goes, "Good solo." Those are the moments that make an entire career. At that point in time in my life, that was the greatest moment of my life. He probably, it was just a random act of kindness for him, but for me, and for the fact that I just happened to have a video camera that I think I borrowed off my mom or something, and set it back on my amp, so you don't get a shot from the audience of the full band. But Keller, thank you for being Blues King. But you do get you see Cropper, you see Charlie Daniels, You see me. You see him pat me on the back. You can hear him tell me, good solo. And that was the first time that I played with. It was the first time that I played with Charlie Daniels, but it was not the last. And I think the last time I played with him, I was coming at it from a lot more experience, and I got to play with Charlie's band on Charlie's amp, on Charlie's Les Paul, in front of his headlining crowd. And that, my friends, was awesome. We talk about it in the interview today. The Allman Betts Revival is playing down the street here in Florida. And the guy I'm interviewing says, you should come out early and hang out with me by the board. And if Devin hears you play, he might want you to sit in with the band. And I was like, that would be incredible. And, but I said, I promise I won't pull a Zakk Wylde if that happens. But here, the likelihood of that happening is highly unlikely unless this channel just blows up. But look, dude, in the future, if this channel hits 100K and people like that are rolling through town, and I know people, doing the thing, then there could be a time where I'm doing drop-in jams with, acts like that. So that would be amazing. Squawk it like a duck. Iron Man says, no, so here's the deal. I'll give you a clue on this interview, but Zakk Wylde played with the Allman Brothers, right? I mean, who knows, dude? They might have considered bringing him in full time, but Zakk just still had that rock star thing, and they were trying to tell him before he went on, look, just lay back, watch everybody, don't do any rock star stuff, and all that. And Zakk says, oh yeah, okay. But then once Zakk got out there, he started chugging beer, spraying beer, his foot on the monitor, spraying beer into the crowd like he was, at an Ozzy show. And soloing like extended, just, and it was too much, bro. He took too much. So, yeah, y'all need to, when that interview, now look, the interviews, if you are a regular member of the channel, you've now got access to about 76 videos that only members get to see. If you're a Rockstar member, you get early access to the interviews and early access to the Time Machine stuff. Eventually, I'm going to put the Time Machine stuff in with the regular member stuff, and maybe the Time Machine stuff I release one day. But for now, we'll just keep it for members of the channel. I'm trying to provide as many perks for membership as possible, and the best deal is basic membership, 76 videos, and I've got more. Here's the other thing. I'll tell P-Funk this. I'm going to show you guys this. Stick right there. This tape. So this tape right here. This tape I found. There is a little bit of footage on my channel of the Shock House. Tiny little bit. And there's a tiny bit of footage of me and P-Funk and Johnny D and the band and everybody at the Shock House before a show and all that. But I found it. I found the full video. So an entire, before the show, hanging out at the Shock House, is on here, and a full Boy Elroy opening for, I believe it was Love Hate that night at Exposure 54, which is kind of dark footage or whatever. That's on here, and then like some assorted jams and stuff like that. I'm gonna get that whole tape transferred, and that's gonna go up in the time machine, but also maybe that might have to go on Patreon, because here's the deal. And P-Funk, I don't know if you remember this, or maybe I'll just have to blot it out. But Johnny D, there is a little bit of nudity on the video, and maybe P-Funk remembers that. But yeah, Slowfi says better burn a hard copy on disc for backup. Yeah, well, here's the deal, dude. Once I get this transferred, thank you very much, Chimp. Once I get this transferred to digital and we upload it, then we've got it, right? And I'll put it on a few, yes, Dave Strong. Yeah. So here's the deal, man. We were all getting ready to play this show. These two girls were hanging out at the house. It's the Shock House, like random girls showing up. We're getting ready for the gig. P-Funk's hanging out. We're partying. We're drinking beer, all of that stuff. And these girls were ragging on our friend because he inositol. Maybe P-Funk can elaborate? Well, they were saying that Johnny D was lacking in the glutes, right? That he had no glutes, right? And at one point, the girl pats me and goes, "See, he's got, and then pointing at Johnny, there is no P-Funk, Freddie. Oh, here's the deal. It's basically Johnny's derriere, I believe. Dave says he doesn't. So I'll blot that out, right? I'll blot that out. But there is some mild partying going on. There's some mild partying on the video. So I may have to, here's the deal. It might have to just go up on Patreon. And I'll put a teaser video up on YouTube, because I just don't think the partying and stuff like that, you can't have that on YouTube, right? But look, Patreon, here's what I try to do. I try to fill the Patreon up with videos that haven't even been released yet to the members. So even earlier, there's usually a little bit, but the Patreon is still a baby channel compared to what we got going on YouTube. So maybe I'll have to do a censored version for YouTube, and we'll do uncensored version on Patreon. That's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. Yeah, but I was just thinking about, dude, that's the only footage of the Shock House. Now, Elvis is saying, trivia time, bassist Dana Strum and singer Mark Slaughter were in which project before Slaughter? They were in Vinnie Vincent's Invasion. There's the answer, bro. Vinnie Vincent, yes, Chris A. Chris A's got it right. You're absolutely right. It's always good to have Elvis in the building, right? It's always good. That's a good trivia question, Elvis. We much appreciate that. Now look, we've got about 6 minutes left in this esteemed episode, and we've talked about the Keith Urban. Oh, K-Dog, thank you so much. What musician's passing affected you hard? Well, I can say on a personal level, a buddy of mine, a musician, none of you guys would know. I got the call on 5 or 6 o'clock one day that the guy died, and the last call that I had gotten from him, maybe maybe was a week and a half before that. He called me looking for work. He called me and says, "Man, I don't have any work. I really need some work. Do you have anything?" And the reality was, I didn't have anything, to give him. But I felt bad because I know I've never been one to call up people and go, "Hey, I really need a gig." But I felt bad that at the time I'm like, dude, I'm not really booking anything right now. Like I'm not probably the guy to call, but I think I told him to call. Hey, call this dude. He needs a singer or something. This guy was a singer. So a week and a half later, one of my old roommates calls me up and goes, "Dude, I'm in the hospital and he's gone." And I'm like, "What? Like what the are you serious?" And then what ended up happening, because I was the only guy to talk to the direct source at the hospital, that all my musician friends were calling me, and I became the lightning rod of bad news, and having to relive this grief over phone call after phone call. And dude, that hit me harder. That look, I mean, I was sad when Elvis died. I was sad when Edward Van Halen died. I'm Prince or whoever. I'm sad when I hear it. I go, that sucks. But your friend that was calling and needed work, and it was tough, and then you next phone call you get is he's dead. He just all of a sudden got sick and died, and then he's everyone's calling me wanting to know what happened, and I'm telling them over and over again, like, the last time I talked to him, he was hurting, he needed work. That was the toughest musician passing. I can't, I don't have any personal connection to a superstar. But I can relate to a dude, um, that's he's calling me looking for work, and I'm feeling bad because I'm like, dude, I'm covered right now. I don't have anything. And then to find out that he's dead, and then everybody's calling me, and I'm having to. And dude, once I finally just put the phone down, man, I just was like grieving, dude, just for like hours. And that was the toughest, man. That was the toughest because it was somebody I knew and I could relate. You know. So see, Brad Hardesty, you get it, brother. Mike H, you get it as well. And that's the thing, man. It's look, it's I think losing people close to you, or people that struggle like you, that's harder than a superstar. I mean, we can all feel bad for superstars, but they made it. And the rest of us are just trying to survive, you know. And look, dude, I know this. Here's the thing, man. This guy left behind kids. Over the years, we would make donations to the mother of his children and stuff like that, dude. It's just all the way around, dude. And this guy was a cool guy, man. If he was still around, dude, he had a lot of friends. So yeah, it's sad, man. Diana, that's very correct. The older we get, the more friends we lose, man. And creatives, Whitney Houston hit him. Well, man, yeah, it's a tremendous loss for the world when the talent burns out like that. Chris A is saying he's been to the funeral home for three of his students. I mean, that's got to be hard. It's like, how do you process that? It's a tough thing, man. It's a tough thing, and but to end on a positive note, here's the thing: we're still here, and man, it's a great thing to be alive, and that's what we have to be thankful for, man. And we are getting at the age where things are, life is starting to end up on the back nine and all that. But the only thing that matters is we're alive, and we have to keep going. We have to stay positive, and do our best to keep going. So, unless we got any more questions, I think that's going to wrap it up for tonight. Unless we get a last minute super chat, we'll get everybody to hit the like button. Let's get everybody to hit the like button because, man, we have gone the gamut tonight on this, and it's been an amazing night. I've talked myself silly today doing an hour-long interview and doing an hour on here. But man, it's always a pleasure doing this every Saturday, and I thank you all so much for a great night. Everybody have an amazing, and tomorrow morning on the channel, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Richard Dukeshire Part 2. Even better, talking about Van Halen, talking about AC/DC, talking about Rolling Stones, all of that. That interview is going to be tomorrow on the channel, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't miss it. Stick with the channel. There's going to be amazing stuff coming up. Thank you, everybody, and have an amazing night.